You think your contempt is good taste? It isn't. That man you can't stand, the loud one, the arrogant one, the one who takes what he wants without flinching. You didn't judge him. You recognized him. The heat you feel toward him is not information about him. It is information about you. Carl Jung had a name for the part of you that's been pointing fingers your whole life. And it isn't your conscience. It's your shadow. And it's been trying to give you back something you threw away. Sit with that, because it goes against everything you assume about your own contempt. You believe your resentment is a verdict you've handed down on lesser men. It isn't. It's a confession. Every time your jaw tightens at the sight of him, the one who wins easily, who asks for more without apologizing, who walks into the room like he owns it, you are not witnessing a stranger. You are meeting an exile. A part of yourself you locked out so long ago you've forgotten it was ever yours. He didn't steal anything from you. He's just living something you buried. And the burial is the whole problem. Now, be precise with me, because this is where most men get it wrong. Not everyone you dislike is hiding inside you. Mild distaste is just discernment. You meet a man who is rude to a waiter, and you think less of him, and then you forget him by dinner. That's not your shadow, that's a working moral sense, and you should keep it. The shadow does not announce itself through ordinary proportionate judgment. It announces itself through charge. You know the charge. It's the resentment that's too big for the situation. The contempt that loops. The man you can't stop checking, whose posts you scroll even though they make your chest tighten, whose name in conversation makes something in you go cold and sharp. You tell yourself you're above him, and yet you cannot look away from him. That contradiction is the tell. The difference would be the natural response to a man who is genuinely beneath you. Obsession is something else entirely. Obsession means he's standing on top of something that belongs to you. Jung put it plainly in his autobiography. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Not everything that mildly annoys us. Everything that irritates, that gets under the skin and stays there. He treated strong, irrational feeling as a flag. Fascination, disgust, the contempt that runs hotter than the facts justify. To him, these were not noise. They were data. The intensity itself was the signal that something unconscious had been touched. Some buried part of you brushed against by the sight of another man living it out loud. So learn to feel the difference in your own body. Proportionate dislike sits lightly and passes. The charge sits in your gut and won't leave. One is a judgment. The other is a map. And the man who provokes the most heat in you is, without knowing it, holding up the clearest mirror you will ever look into. So what is this thing exactly? This shadow that's been doing your hating for you? Forget the pop culture version. The shadow is not your inner demon, not some caged monster of pure malice waiting to break loose. That's a comic book distortion, and it will keep you from understanding yourself for the rest of your life if you believe it. The shadow is simpler and stranger than that. It is everything about yourself that you refused to live. Jung called it, with brutal economy, the thing a person has no wish to be. Not the thing that is evil. The thing that is inconvenient. Unacceptable to the image you've built. The traits you pushed out of awareness, not because they were wicked, but because they didn't fit the man you decided to present to the world. Your shadow is your unlived life. The roads not taken. The appetites not fed. The parts of your nature you amputated to be acceptable, to be loved, to be safe. And here is the distinction that changes everything. Jung was careful to say the shadow's contents are dark only relative to the ego, meaning dark to your conscious self-image, not dark in themselves. Repressed, not damned. The shadow is built from what you couldn't admit you were, not from what is rotten in you. A man raised to be gentle exiles his hardness into shadow. A man raised to be humble exiles his hunger. A man taught that wanting was greedy exiles his ambition. None of those drives are sins. They were simply forbidden, and so they went underground. Jung warned that the less of the shadow a man lives consciously, the blacker and denser it grows. That's the trap. The trait doesn't shrink when you bury it. It festers. It gathers weight in the dark, and the longer it sits exiled, the more alien and threatening it looks when you finally meet it, wearing another man's face. So when you feel that the rival is monstrous, ask whether you are seeing a monster, or simply seeing your own disowned strength after 30 years in the dark, grown strange to you because you have never once let it into the light. You weren't born with this shadow. You built it. And you built it young, before you had any say in the matter. Picture the boy you were. Somewhere back there, you ran an experiment you didn't know you were running. You tested every part of yourself against the people whose love you needed, and you watched what happened. When you got loud, when you took up space, when you wanted to win so badly it showed on your face, what came back? For a lot of men, what came back was a flinch, a frown, a withdrawal of warmth. Don't be arrogant. Don't show off. Don't be so aggressive. Who do you think you are? And you learned fast, the way children learn the things that keep them safe. Certain parts of me cost me love. So you cut them off. You didn't decide this consciously. No boy does. You simply noticed which drives made the people you depended on pull away, and you amputated them to keep the connection. The hunger to dominate, the raw pleasure of winning, the desire to be seen and admired, the willingness to want something out loud without softening at first. Whatever got punished or shamed or met with cold silence, you packed away, and you got very good at not feeling it. Poet Robert Bly gave this its sharpest image, building straight on Jung's foundation. He said we spend the first part of life putting things into an invisible bag we drag behind us. Every time someone we love says don't, another piece of us goes in the bag. By the time you're a grown man, that bag is long and heavy, stuffed with everything you decided was unacceptable. And you've been dragging it behind you so long you've stopped noticing the weight. But here's what nobody tells the boy. Those parts didn't die. You can't kill a part of your own nature. You can only exile it. And everything you put in that bag is still alive in there, still yours, still waiting. And it has been waiting your whole life for you to come back and open it. So where did it all go? This is the mechanism. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. What you disown does not vanish. It cannot. Energy in the psyche doesn't evaporate just because the conscious mind refuses it. It goes underground, and from underground, it does something cunning. It climbs back out into the world by attaching itself to other people. You don't experience your own buried hunger as hunger. You experience it out there, draped over some real man who happens to be living it openly. Jung called this projection, and he described its effect with cold precision. Projection, he said, changes the world into the replica of one's own unknown face. The replica of your own unknown face. The man across the room who takes what he wants without flinching is not, to you, just a man. He has become a screen. And onto that screen, you are projecting the exact film you refuse to watch inside yourself. His ambition is a hook. Your ambition hangs on. His appetite gives your starved appetite somewhere to point. And because you've forbidden these things in yourself, you do the only thing left available to you. You hate them in him. You get to despise your own exiled hunger from a safe distance, with clean hands, calling it justice. This is why the contempt feels so righteous and so personal at the same time. You attack in him exactly what you forbade in yourself. The arrogance you can't stand is your own buried self-permission. The shamelessness that disgusts you is your own desire, finally living without apology. Someone else's body, because you would never allow it in your own. And notice what Jung said, this costs you. Projection isolates you. It puts an illusion between you and the world, so that instead of a real relationship with the man, instead of actually seeing him, learning from him, even using him, you have only the phantom you've painted over him. You're not in a rivalry with him. You're in a rivalry with a piece of yourself you've nailed to his face. Which means you can never win it, and you can never walk away from it, until you take the projection down. Now we arrive at the part that matters most to you. The man who is building something. Because the standard story about the shadow stops at the dark stuff. The cruelty, the rage, the greed. And if that were all the shadow held, you could be forgiven for keeping it buried. But that is not all it holds. Not even close. Jung was explicit, and this is the line to carve into the wall. The shadow, he wrote, does not consist only of morally reprehensible tendencies, but also displays a number of good qualities. Normal instincts, appropriate reactions, realistic insights, creative impulses. Read that as a man with something to build. The shadow holds gold. There is treasure buried in that bag you've been dragging, and for most ambitious men, the treasure is not vice at all. It's strength. Disowned strength. Think about what you actually buried. You didn't bury your capacity for evil. You barely had one. You buried your ambition because someone made you feel it was greedy. You buried your aggression because you were taught that good men are soft. You buried your hunger to win, your comfort with taking up space, your willingness to charge what you're worth and want it loudly. You buried your self-permission, the simple right to pursue what you pursue without apologizing for the pursuit. Those aren't sins. Those are exactly the powers a man needs to build anything real. And you locked them in the dark and called yourself humble for doing it. So now, look again at the man you resent, the one who flaunts the ambition you swallowed, who wins without flinching, who admits he wants money and status and victory while you perform indifference. You call him arrogant, but strip the heat off that word and look at what's underneath. He isn't living a vice you're too good for. He's living a strength you abandoned. The gold you buried, he carries in his open hand. And the reason the sight of it burns you is that some honest part of you knows it should have been yours. You didn't lose your appetite, you exiled it. And you've been resenting every man who kept his ever since. If your jaw set at any of that, if you felt the specific man rise up in your mind and not just an idea, then you should know what this channel is. The forged mind is not here to make you feel good about staying the same. It's for men doing exactly this excavation, going back into the dark, reclaiming the exiled power, and stopping the long, exhausting performance of virtue that's been costing you your edge. This is not self-help that asks you to think pretty thoughts. It's the harder work of becoming whole. If that's the work you're actually in, subscribe and stay. Because the rest of this is where it gets practical, where it asks something real of you. So let's talk about what the burial actually cost you. Because this isn't abstract. The traits you exiled didn't just go quiet in some inner basement and leave the rest of you intact. They took your power with them when they went. You can't amputate one part of your nature and keep the rest at full strength. Every drive you disowned was load-bearing, and the structure has been sagging ever since. Look at the man who exiled his aggression to be gentle. He didn't become gentle. He became unable to say no. Aggression, used consciously, is just the force that holds a line. So now he can't set a boundary that holds. He gets walked over and calls it being easygoing. He swallows the thing he should have said and lies awake rehearsing it at 2 in the morning. Teeth he was ashamed of were the same teeth he needed to protect what matters to him, and he filed them down to be liked. Look at the man who exiled his hunger to seem above it all. He can't ask for the raise. The words die in his throat because wanting was made shameful before he was 10. He can't push for the deal, can't name his price without discounting it in the same breath, can't walk up to the woman because desire that direct was trained out of him. He confused starving himself with being a good man. They are not the same thing. This is what Jung meant when he said, the repressed shadow takes on an autonomous, possessive quality. The drive you refuse to command doesn't disappear. It gets to command you instead. It leaks out sideways as bitterness, as passive resentment, as the quiet self-sabotage of a man who undercuts himself before anyone else can. Your resentment of the rival is the receipt for all of it. It's the itemized bill for a life of self-suppression, and you've been paying it every single day, telling yourself the price was virtue. Now, here's where most men hear all this and lunge for the wrong solution. They think the answer is to go become the man they hate, to swing all the way over, get loud, get ruthless, strap on the arrogance like armor, and call it growth. That is not the work. That is just trading one prison for another, and Jung would have called it exactly what it is: possession. You don't integrate the shadow by letting it take the wheel. You'd only be as enslaved to the trait as you were to its absence. The work is not to slay the shadow, and it is not to become it. The work is integration. Jung's word for it was assimilation, to take the exiled energy back under conscious command. Not to kill the drive, not to obey the drive, but to own it and direct it. He put it in an image you should keep. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You don't get to be whole by picturing your best self. You get there by turning and facing the parts you ran from, and bringing them home one at a time. So this is not about becoming arrogant. It's about owning your aggression, having full access to your own force, and choosing consciously when to use it and when to hold it. It's not about becoming cruel. It's about no longer being afraid of your own teeth. The integrated man hasn't gotten rid of the dangerous parts of himself. He has befriended them. He knows exactly what he's capable of, and that knowledge makes him calm, because nothing in him is running loose anymore. Picture the difference this way. The weak man keeps his shadow locked in a cage and spends enormous energy holding the door shut while it rattles and leaks out as resentment. The strong man keeps his shadow on a leash. Same animal, but one is buried alive and feral, and the other walks at his side, under command, ready when he calls it. You are not trying to put down the wolf. You are trying to learn to walk with it. So how do you actually do this? Not as a concept, but as a practice you can run? It's simpler than you'd think, and harder than you'd like. It starts the next time the charge rises in you. Name the man. The specific one. The rival whose success tastes like acid. The one you compare yourself to in the dark. The one whose name tightens something in your chest. Don't generalize it. Bring his actual face to mind. Then name the exact trait that enrages you. Get precise here. Vague contempt teaches you nothing. Not just, he's arrogant. What, specifically? He asks for more money without apologizing. He promotes himself without cringing. He walks in like he belongs and never once auditions for permission. He wants to win and doesn't pretend otherwise. Find the precise edge of the thing that burns you, because that edge is the coordinate. That's the exact location of your buried trait. Now ask the brutal question, the one that costs you the comfort of feeling superior. Where in me does this live? Disowned. Where am I starving for exactly this? Where did I decide I wasn't allowed to want what he lets himself want? This is the move Jung called moral effort. And he meant effort, not insight that arrives for free. It stings. It deflates you. The whole satisfying story where you're the good man and he's the lesser one collapses. And underneath it, you find something humbling. You don't hate him because he's beneath you. You envy him because he kept what you surrendered, and then you flip the resentment into an inventory. Every man you resent becomes an entry in a ledger of reclaimable traits. He has self-permission. That's a power I exiled, and I can take it back. He has unapologetic hunger. Mine is in the bag, and I can go get it. You stop using the rival as a container for what you hate, and start using him as a catalog of what you're ready to reclaim. The heat that used to just burn becomes light. It shows you, with precision, the exact parts of your own strength you left in the dark, and the exact place to start digging. Now I have to sharpen this because the cheap version of this idea is dangerous, and it will rot your judgment if you let it. This does not mean everyone you dislike is secretly you. It does not mean every man you criticize is just a mirror, that all judgment is projection, that you're never allowed to simply be right about someone. That is a distortion of Jung, and it's a distortion that will leave you defenseless. Some men are genuinely arrogant. Some are genuinely exploitative, dishonest, dangerous. Your perception is not automatically a confession. Sometimes the man really is what you think he is, and your read on him is accurate, and you should act on it. Projection doesn't replace your judgment. It inflates it. It accounts for the disproportionate part of the reaction, the heat that runs hotter than the facts deserve. Both things can be true at once. He can be genuinely difficult, and your reaction can still be carrying a charge that belongs to you. The skill is learning to tell which part is clean perception and which part is your own buried material screaming through him. So how do you tell? Not by whether you dislike him. Disliking bad behavior is just a working conscience, and you should keep yours. You tell by the disproportion, by the looping, possessive quality of the reaction Jung pointed straight at. The obsession, the inability to look away, the private comparison you run when no one's watching. Proportionate dislike sits lightly and lets you move on. Projection grips you and won't release. When the reaction is bigger than the situation, that's not him anymore. That's the part of you he's standing on. Hold both truths at once, and don't use this teaching to excuse cowardice or to dissolve every honest judgment you'll ever need to survive. Once you've held both of those truths, something shifts permanently in how you see the men who get under your skin. They stop being your enemies. Not because they've changed, because you have. You start to see what they actually are to you, which is something stranger and more useful than rivals. They're teachers. Unpaid, unaware, unwilling teachers, but teachers all the same. Jung wrote that we meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. The men you resent are some of those disguises. Each one is a mirror walking around the world, showing you with merciless accuracy the map to your own buried power. You couldn't have drawn that map yourself. Your conscious mind doesn't know where the gold is buried. That's the whole point of burial. But the charge knows. Your contempt knows exactly where to point. So every flare of resentment becomes a coordinate. This man shows you the ambition you exiled. That one shows you the self-permission you surrendered. Another shows you a hunger you've been starving for so long you forgot it was yours. Laid end to end, the men you can't stand form a curriculum, a complete, detailed syllabus in everything you refused to become. They are teaching the exact course you most need to take, and they're teaching it for free, and they have no idea they're doing it. Which reframes the whole bitter business of envy. The rival you've been quietly tearing down in your head was never the obstacle. He was the instruction. And the day you stop hating him long enough to read what he's showing you is the day he stops being competition and starts being one of the most valuable men in your life. Because he's pointing, without knowing it, straight at the power you abandoned and are finally ready to reclaim. And this is where Jung takes it all the way down to the root, to the thing the whole teaching is really about. Because you might still be holding on to the idea that the goal here is to become a good man, to be virtuous, principled, clean. Jung looked straight at that goal and named something deeper underneath it. The aim, he insisted, is not to be good. It is to be whole. Sit with how much those differ. The man chasing goodness is chasing an image. The polished mask Jung called the persona, the compromise between who you are and who society says you should appear to be. And here's the structural trap he identified. The harder and more rigidly you identify with that mask, the larger the shadow you build behind it. The two grow in exact proportion. The man who polishes the good guy persona until it gleams, humble, principled, above all that crude ambition, is, by that very polishing, exiling more and more of himself into the dark, which is precisely why he resents the openly hungry rival so violently. The split is the engine. The harder you perform the man who doesn't care about winning, the more savagely you'll hate the man who simply admits he does. A man split against himself like that is weak, and he's secretly resentful, and he can't help it. Half of him is performing virtue, while the other half sits exiled and starving, leaking bitterness through the cracks. He is at war with himself and calls it being principled. The whole man is something else entirely. He has gone down into the bag and brought his exile home. He owns his hunger and his hardness and his appetite, and because he owns them, they no longer own him. That's the man who is dangerous and gentle by choice. Not gentle because he was never capable of force, but gentle because he commands a force he's no longer afraid of. Wholeness, not purity, is the source of real power. And strangely, it's the source of real peace, because the war inside him is finally over. There's nothing left disowned in him, so there's nothing left to hate in another man. So here is what I want you to do with this. Not understand it. Use it. The next time contempt rises in you, that hot, specific, looping resentment toward a man who has what you won't let yourself want, stop. Don't perform the judgment. Don't reach for the familiar story where you're the better man and he's the lesser one. That story has cost you enough. Instead, read the map. Feel where the charge points. Ask what he's living that you exiled and what it would mean to take it back. Because that man is not your enemy, and he never was. He's holding a piece of you. He's standing on top of something you buried so long ago, you forgot it was ever yours. Your ambition, your hunger, your aggression, your simple right to want and to win without apology. He didn't take it from you. You handed it over a long time ago to stay safe and stay loved. But you're not that boy anymore, and the bargain has expired. The men you resent have been showing you your shadow this whole time. Not to shame you, to return something. So go down into the dark you've been avoiding and bring back what you left there. The gold was never in his hands. It was always in yours. You just buried it where you'd have to hate another man to find it.